Hi, this is Kasian, and it's time for a weekly conference call at VectorspaceAI. We'll start with what's happening around the world, and that is geopolitical instability resulting from the Afghanistan evacuation. This is top of mind, and its impact on global capital markets, now and in the future. The U.S. is advising booster shots after 8 months. There is a global chip shortage, and this is impacting the semiconductor industry, in particular other industries. Toyota, who is to cut global production by 40%, and it's not just Toyota. On the industry side, the second largest mortgage lender accepts Bitcoin. CNBC is reporting that United Wholesale Mortgage announced plans this week to accept cryptocurrency for home loans, and an apparent first for the national mortgage industry. Michael Burry, famous for the movie The Big Short and the execution of that trade, has challenged Cathie Wood at ARK Invest over essentially themes of innovation and the markets, and Cathie Wood's ETFs that represent innovation. That'll be interesting to see how that plays out, because it connects to everything that we are doing in the financial markets, and that relates to innovation and themes and their associated trading vehicles. Next, it is Tesla AI Day, and Barron's is reporting that Musk says Tesla will have a humanoid robot next year. And of course, we know the foundation is going to be AI and ML, sitting on top of datasets. Under themes and events, China troubles persist, and that's resulted in questions related to Alibaba delisting from U.S. markets, and many other questions and risk scenarios. Long-term themes versus short-term themes. This is something that we're going to be talking about in the future, and that's because we are looking at geopolitical events and how they might impact or represent long-term themes and have long-lasting impact on certain sectors of the market. And then semiconductors. This is a long-term theme as well. You can position in semiconductors today and probably do pretty well in about a year as demand continues to increase, outpace supply. And then of course its connection to Bitcoin mining and GPUs. And then under themes and events, we've got cybersecurity. And on the VXV Thematic Baskets channel, some have noted that ransomware produces different thematic baskets than the term cybersecurity. And you can demo that if you join the Thematic Baskets channel. Just send us a message online. Next, we've got the Corp section. And under Corp, we've got HR, legal, and facilities. So under HR, we are looking at continued hiring, and that relates to quality assurance and curation in particular. And of course, QA falls under the umbrella for us, under engineering. And engineering hires continue as well. On the legal side, everything is in process, and on the facilities side, we are continuing to look for new space in the Berkeley area, and we are also looking in the Emerville area. One of the reasons for that is we are establishing a wet lab, so we'll be able to conduct our own experiments in collaboration with other labs. That's taking a little longer than we thought, based on some of the issues related to office space these days. And establishing a wet lab is especially tricky if you want to get close to campus. So what we're going to do is secure a temporary location, and temporary defined by maybe about a year, and that'll give us time to build out the wet lab. In the meantime, we'll be collaborating with others related to conducting experiments, designing experiments for their wet labs. On the engineering, QA, and product and ops side, we are focused in preparing for the demos in Chicago. We're going to be on a few panels and presenting. We'll have a booth, as mentioned, and we will be presenting a Jupyter notebook that will represent our data engineering pipeline and how it works, how you import a data set and then visualize it and access the API and generate a cluster, a thematic basket of stocks or cryptos. So we'll be showcasing that, and we'll also be demoing the dataset toolkit, and we will be demoing the API. So at the trading show, there will be lots of quantitative analysts walking around, and we intend to present to anyone that is a software engineer an API that they'll be able to see they can easily integrate. We will also be demoing the thematic basket generator and a few other things. Those are the main things for Chicago. We are also working on our summarization modules, and we are working on our ensemble modules. These would be combinations of algorithms or combinations of language models, and parameterizing, hyperparameterizing them. When it comes to the data engineering pipelines we're working on, that is plural. It represents a network of data engineering pipelines we plan on rolling out. And concurrently, we're working on visualization, of course. The visualization components are going to be initially 2D, and there'll be heat maps and relationship networks that we'll also be demoing in Chicago. On the customers, partners, and collaborators side, under the financial markets category of customers, partners, and collaborators, we are talking with Epiphany, and that's spelled APIFINY. We have a few friends over there, and they work on a united order book for CEXs and DEXs, CEX and DEXs, and centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges. They also provide institutional security and compliance. And those kinds of features, additional features, we'll want access to, of course, for our institutional customers. So under the financial market side, we are also preparing for a flood of incoming customer requests and feature requests, and customers interested in data sets from individual retail to institutional such as asset managers. We are going to have a much different pool of customer leads than we did with new data. Now, new data generated 10 funds for us, 10 leads. These funds reached out to us and wanted to talk to us, and we are still in dialogue with them. We made it a requirement that they hold VXV, so we're sure they're mulling it over in addition to doing a few other things. But this pool that we're establishing, this new pool of customer leads that we'll be extracting from Chicago, is going to be much different than the new data pool. We are going to be talking a lot about VXV. It will be a requirement to access data sets. So it would be interesting for anyone that is involved with VXV to determine who is on that panel and who's going to be attending the trading show, so you can understand who the audience is we are talking to. On the Space Biosciences side, we are still under customers, partners, and collaborators. We are moving forward with Azure Space, and we are also moving forward with two other groups. This would be Space Capital and Maston Space Systems. We are talking with these groups related to Space Biosciences, obviously, and the fact that Space Biosciences is the core of the space industry. So far, everyone agrees. What that means for us is that we can be the Space Biosciences arm for all launch companies, and that's what we intend to do. Maston Space Systems has a calendar, they have a launch schedule, and it's imperative for us to gather all launch schedules so that we have maximum flexibility in terms of launching experiments. And launching experiments, conducting experiments on the ISS is something that the Azure Space team does on a regular basis with the HP Spaceborne Computer 2, that's what they call it. So we'll be designing experiments and partnering with a number of launch companies to get this stuff off the ground at about a kilogram, and that's about $800,000 per kilogram. The prices will drop and they will range below $800,000 for a kilogram, and it's likely that we'll need less than a kilogram. So the costs for us, we can bear them without a problem at this point. Of course, a lot of our costs are going to be subsidized. All scientific collaborations are growing and on track. We have just about too many to list right now, so everyone can be confident that they are moving right along. And that's with ICL, Imperial College of London, UCL, University College of London, Joint Genome Institute, Joint Bioenergy Institute, Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, and the DOE. And of course, we've got a few other groups, government groups we're talking to related to Space Biosciences contracts. Next, we've got the corporate strategy, corporate development, business development, and sales and marketing section. And here we have a focus again on the Chicago demo. So all sales and marketing resources and efforts are trained on the Chicago demo right now. Under IR, PR, and Marcom, the Chicago demo will result in PR before, during, and after the demo. This is what we can say. And before October 5th is a time frame that we are targeting for communications to the public. And this would be not communication from us, but communication from some of our collaborators and partners and customers. On the exchanges side, Epiphany is an exchange Epiphany is a unified order book, not an exchange, and a little similar to LCX. So we'll be working with groups like them to create or at least tighten the spread across order books. Of course, there'll be less arbitrage, but we're okay with that. All other exchange dialogues are in process. Next, we've got questions from the trader base. Question 1, when the team starts buying tokens back, will the coins come from the circulating supply to slowly decrease it? If yes, how often will the circulating supply be updated so we can see how many have been bought by the team? Okay, so the first question, yes, the circulating supply will be decreased due to buybacks as tokens will be placed in the company treasury. And then the second part of that question is how often will the circulating supply be updated? We intend to follow an updating schedule similar to a reporting schedule that's required by U.S. regulators and outside auditing firms. Question 2, how do you think NASDAQ will allow crypto stocks? Will it work the same way as normal stock, but instead of buying stocks, coins? Are companies going to be obligated to share quarterly and annual earnings report? I mean, will it work as it would for a traditional company? Well, we don't know, and neither does NASDAQ or NYSE know what kind of trading vehicles or financial instruments they can use to represent both a crypto and a stock. In terms of regulation and listing requirements, those are being hammered out as well. We know that NASDAQ is considering listing cryptos. We don't know what the requirements are, but we do intend to fit within those requirements, and our law firms will make sure of that. Question 3. First let me answer the reporting requirements. So the reporting requirements, what we wanted to mention that we're familiar with having to file quarterly as required by the SEC. So having that infrastructure in place to do that, you literally do need infrastructure. You need software infrastructure, in fact, to file XBRL reports and so forth. So there are a lot of detailed requirements. We know how to navigate through them, and will certainly likely be based on the same schedule, same fiscal schedule that you would file with the SEC and FINRA if you're a U.S. company, U.S. crypto company. We are more interested in the creative financial instruments that would represent a crypto and a stock combined. The financial instrument would be similar to the VIX, VIX, or an ETF. Question 3. In your last call, you mentioned the utility of VXV whilst being a trading vehicle. This is an entirely new type of asset which breaks new ground, with most corporates and potential revenue partners needing to hold VXV to use its service and also being relatively risk-averse to their unclear rules and legislation and rules. What is the plan B if, say, every company is interested in dataset services provided by Vectorspace, but none of them want to purchase or own VXV? So let me answer this question here. There's a second question involved with this loaded question here. And the second question, well, first let's go over the second question. It says, do you forego this rule for consequential revenue, or do you do the purchasing for them in the back end? How much influence lobbying will you need for an asset class like VXV to be accepted in mainstream Wall Street? Okay, so there's a series of questions here, and they're not necessarily related. So we'll go over the first one. And making VXV a requirement is something that we have no problem with. If a company can't be bothered to trouble themselves with the future, which is the true global capital marketplace represented by crypto, then they become a low priority for us. That's just the bottom line. Do you forego this rule for consequential revenue? And we will do things on a case-by-case basis. So we're certainly flexible and adaptable. Or do you do the purchasing for them in the back end? We do both. How much influence lobbying will you need for an asset class like VXV to be accepted in mainstream Wall Street? Well, part of the reason that VXV will have a much better acceptance rate is based on the fact that VXV generates cash for them. Question 4, how will you determine the minimum amount of VXV needed to access a dataset service? Will it be pegged to $1 or a fixed amount of VXV, knowing that there is only 50 million VXV out there with a plan to reduce to 10 million in long term? Will financial reporting be done in USD or in VXV? So we are still working on determining the minimum amount of VXV needed to access a dataset service, a particular tiered level of services. One of the reasons for that is we need to better understand the customizations that are coming up the pike with these customers. It's been expressed to us by customers. Two things have been expressed to us by customers, which we're gearing up for. First, it's one of the questions that has been asked often is whether or not we provide a signal into the data sets. And yes, we do. That's based on our API. So we're working with customers to provide a response and an API doc for them, spec for them on that. Now, when you look at how many VXV we have in our maximum supply, 50 million, you can also look at them fractionally. So we have 18 decimal places. VXV geared for the financial markets might be different than VXV geared for space biosciences. That's something we have to consider. In terms of filing, reporting, and revenue, revenue reporting in USD or VXV, we'll likely do both, but it will be required likely that we only file in USD. And in terms of it being pegged to the dollar, you can look up the term 99 cents, 99C per data set. in our Telegram channel and find plenty of commentary on that. And our outside accounting and auditing firms will work with the SEC and FINRA to determine reporting requirements. Question 5, when is the IPO going to happen? Could you give us more details? Everyone is curious about this subject. Well, we'd encourage everyone to look up the term quiet period and IPO, and you'll understand why we are not talking about details or dates at this point in time. It's early days. You can consider us in a pre-IPO stage. We do trade on essentially what is a second market, a group of thinly traded order books. Question 6. You mentioned the ball is in your court regarding S&P and several others, and that you're just waiting on engineering resources to be freed up. Is it safe to assume that this would be a top priority, as they would be quickest path to consequential revenue? The answer is yes. Securing additional resources is always a constraint for a scientific and algorithmically driven technology company. Quality assurance engineers are also extremely important. There is also an expression that goes something like this: 9 women can't make a baby in 1 month. If you look up the term Brooks Law and software, you'll find that expanding your engineering team is not just a matter of continually hiring as fast as you can. Of course, you've got to hire for key personnel and specialists. And of course, you've got to be competitive with your compensation packages. And you also have to be working on something that is extremely innovative and captures the interest and attention of world-class scientists and engineers. And that's what we have. Question 7. Can you explain the new chain for biosciences? Would it require a new token? Yes, we can explain that, and that's a good segue straight to our strategy section. So before we address that, we do want to mention that we will be demonstrating. We're going to go into a phase of demonstrating our capabilities in AI and ML, and that involves developing demos, using engineering cycles to develop phases of demo production. So we're going to be producing a variety of demos that demonstrate ways you can use signals, the datasets, the visualizations to extract alpha, and demos also, of course, to include relationship networks that will be extracted from datasets in space biosciences that show how discoveries are made or new hypotheses are generated. That's going to take a lot of heads down engineering work, which we're used to. On the space biosciences side, under strategy here, we are producing a space industry report, as we mentioned, and we're going to be including pipelines that describe how therapies on Earth, of course, might help therapies in space, but primarily how therapies in space will affect all of life sciences. There are several. It's countless. When you look up innovation related to advancements in space, you'll be able to see inventions, all kinds of ways that humanity has benefited by innovations and advancements that have been made when it comes to exploring space. In particular, though, space biosciences provides the ability for new kinds of funding, additional funding, and significant innovations and advancements in biosciences. That's all of life sciences, and that's why we're here. So we'll be mapping that out in our space industry report as we map out the total addressable market and the economy as well, the space economy. And then describing a customized chain for particular industries, space biosciences, as that question was brought up before. We're certainly considering a new chain. related to, or I should say specific to industries. When you look at what you can do on the Ethereum blockchain related to wrapping Python around Solidity and doing a few tricky things, passing data and accessing APIs and things like that, and in particular engaging in data provenance where you're manipulating hashes of hashes continually. You want maximum flexibility there, and you want the ability for your chain to do things that the current Ethereum chain does not do. Space Biosciences is much different than the financial markets. They're two completely different industries, two completely different animals. Of course, we talk about interdisciplinary research benefiting both industries. So what we are anticipating is to conduct an analysis on what it would take to develop our own chain, and one that would be specific to an industry, in particular space biosciences. Rolling out a new chain, of course, would result in a net asset value calculation that would, of course, be rolled into the valuation of Vectorspace. So that's something to consider. That's something that we'll be talking about in the future. Our net asset value calculations, NAV calcs, and it would be good. We'd encourage everyone to look up what a NAV calc is and how those are rolled back into the entity, the parent entity in this case. That's all that we have for this week. Feel free to join us next week, and if you have any questions or comments, please post them online. Thanks for joining.